Hey everybody, today's review is going to be on Castle Creations Sidewinder SCT. This is a follow-up video that I had of like a box opening video that I did. So this is the SCT, the 3800Kv motor setup. First thing I'm going to talk about is power. It's got pretty decent power for racing. I run a 3300 2-cell in it. I know I don't run 5,000 milliamp batteries because I don't need all the weight in it. So I run a 3300 milliamp. It's a Traxxas battery, 25C. The battery doesn't get hot or anything. I'm sure. Well, actually, I have a Thunder Power battery that I run in it as well, and you can tell a big difference in the Thunder Power and the Traxxas. Traxxas makes a good battery, but the Thunder Power, it's a 3800 milliamp and it's 35 Cs, so it has more amps behind it. The Traxxas battery is kind of right at the limit of where this thing should be running, but for qualifying and practicing stuff like that, it's a good battery. Like I said, you don't need a bunch of weight when you're racing. So the power is pretty good. I've seen reviews online, and people are saying that this thing will like do wheelies and you know, lift the front wheels off the ground, and they're talking about a slash too, not a rustler. I mean, obviously a rustler would. I haven't seen that yet. Maybe it's just the way I have it programmed, but it gets close to pulling the front wheels off the ground. Probably if I had the tires that are on it now on the concrete, it probably would. But it's plenty of power for racing. I mean, it's perfect for racing. The box in the background back there, I guess it's the old box, because just the other day when I was at the hobby shop, they have a new box, and it says that it's Roar approved now. See, it says that it meets Roar's rules. Now it says, the box says that it's Roar approved. So I guess that it, you know, in a two-wheel drive open or modified class, you could, I guess, run this system now, which is pretty cool. I wish they would just have, you know, KV races instead of turn races, but it is what it is. Let's see, the temp on this thing, when I was racing, it was well, not 100, it was like 99 degrees or 98 degrees. It was hot. And the hottest that it ever got was, the motor got to like 125, I would say. Maybe 115. Somewhere around there. I forgot exactly the number. And the speed controller at that time did have the fan on it. I took the fan off, but it did have the fan on it. And it was like 113 degrees, I think, is the hottest it ever got. Fan's not needed for it. Another thing, let me tell you real quick, is the switch. I took the switch off. If you can see the red little tube down there, what I did is, on Castle stuff, you can, where's a servo wire? I don't have a servo wire. You can basically cut the wire. Say this is the wire. You could cut the wire straight, strip it back, and just twist the wires together, solder them together, and put some heat shrink on it, and it'll I guess close the circuit, and the car will just go on as soon as you plug it in. Switches usually break, especially if you're racing. They get a lot of dirt in them. They take a lot of impact. They'll break pretty easy. The best thing to do is just get rid of it. I've seen a lot of people like nose dive a car into a jump, and the impact will be so bad that it shuts off the car, just because the switch flipped itself forward and shut it off. So if you are going to keep the switch, mount it sideways. Don't mount it where you switch it on front and backwards on the car. Do it this way. That way, if you are in that situation and you hit the car nose in, it won't bump the switch and turn it off. Or if you get hit from the backs real hard sometimes, just don't. I think the best thing to do is just get rid of the switch, but it's up to you. Like I said, it didn't get real hot. The fan isn't needed. That's just another 5 volts that it's taken from your BEC. which is taken from your battery. It just doesn't need it. It's extra weight, even though it doesn't weigh like anything. It's extra weight. The gearing, since I'm talking about heat, I have this car geared at 86 spur, 15 pinion. So I'm in the gear ratio that they call for. I'm under it. I think it's a good gear ratio for what I'm doing right now. If you're driving out on the street, it wouldn't seem super fast. It pulls to top speed real quick, but it's not crazy. You know, I'm saying 30 miles an hour, 32 maybe. And that's on the Traxxas battery, not the Thunder Power. The Thunder Power, I'll probably get another mile an hour out of it, maybe 2. The programming. Okay, if you're gonna program this car, just spend the extra couple bucks. I wish I would have brought it out here, and get the Castle link for it, or the programming card, the field programming card. Either way, get it. It's worth the money. You can really fine tune this thing, and that I'll tell you how that works. I can't really show you, but the servo lead basically, or the servo lead that comes out of the speed controller that goes into the box, you unplug it. When you get the Castle link, it comes with a little adapter piece that you plug into that, and then you plug it into a computer. You download some software or whatever off of Castle's website. It takes like a second to download it. It's not something crazy. Then you can really fine tune this thing. You can't get it as fine tuned when you use the lights and the beeps and the trigger on the controller. It kind of limits itself to what it can do. When you have the Castle link, you can get all the, you can do more than I've even done. You can get you can actually have a throttle curve, you can have a brake curve, obviously lock out your brakes, the brake percentages, the throttle percentages, punch control. You can do a motor test on it, which is, it was kind of confusing how this worked, but I think it just worked. You take the pinion or the spur gear off your truck, your car, and you go into the programming mode on this through the computer. It's like a test torque mode or something. It's called torque motor control, and so you hit the button to test it, and it says next run. It'll be tested. So after your next run, or not your next run, what you do then, when everything's taken apart, you plug a fresh, fully charged battery into it, and you're supposed to run it for like 3 seconds. And okay, so when it tells you what it tells you it's going to do is it says it'll run for 3 seconds, and like the lights are going to change colors, and then it's just going to stop the motor, and that means the test is done. When I did it, it didn't do any of that. It just was like I was just pulling the trigger with no pinion. It wasn't doing anything. But then when I rehooked it up and you go to that setting again, it allows you to open that setting. So I guess it did work. It doesn't like bring up some page that tells you how many kV you're running or anything like that, but it opens up the torque control. There's like 20 different options for the torque of the motor. It comes disable out of the box, which it's still at. So I don't really understand what disable is. I guess disable means that it's, I don't really know. But it seems like all you can do is gain more torque from where it's at, because it's at basically at that end of the map, if that makes any sense. So there's a lot of tuning there. I have mine set up for, what do I have mine set up? The brake is at 25%. That means the power of the brake, that keeps it from just locking up. And even at 25%, when you give it full throttle, it still will lock up the tires. It just is a lot smoother all the way through the trigger control. The punch control is set at 50%. When I raced this last week, I had it set at 60%. And I don't know why, but I completely had this whole percentage backwards on how the punch control worked. It's the less punch control you have is the more punch it has. So if you're down to 0% punch control, it's just full power, and up to 100. So at 100, it's gonna spool up real slow probably and take off it still will break the tires loose, but it is supposed to gradually take off and accelerate. So as you can see, I have it at 50%. Last week I had it at 60%. I felt that it was working perfect. I won the races, but it felt a little dead, like just like kind of a flat battery. I felt like it could have a little bit more punch. It still gets to full throttle and everything, no matter where your punch control is. It just allows you, like when you're coming around a corner on a sandy track, a dry sandy track that's real loose, from spinning out, it kind of helps build you into the speed. It's very gradual. Like I said, I haven't tried, at least I don't remember if I've tried it. I haven't tried the default with just full punch control. I think right away I put it at 70% and then 60%, and now it's at 50. So but that was because I was completely backwards on it, but now I want it at 50, so it has a little bit more punch. I'm sure the higher in the punch you go to, it's going to be a little harder on your batteries. You're going to get less run time. Probably not too noticeable. I have the cutoff voltage on this at 6 volts, and I'm not 100% that's working yet. I think it is, but if you have it on the auto LiPo cutoff mode, now let me explain how that works. I know it says that it cuts it off at 3.2 cells, which maybe it does read the internal voltage, but usually how that works is it cuts it off at like 74% or some percentage. I forgot what the percentage is. Maybe I shouldn't have said 74. It cuts it off at a certain percentage. Now, what people don't understand is, say you ran your car for 3 or 4 minutes and came in to tighten up a screw or switch your tires or make an adjustment on your car, plug your battery back in and go run it again. It's going to take a percentage of what you just plugged into it. Okay, so now you don't have a fully charged battery anymore. It's taking a percentage of maybe a 3/4 of the way charged battery. So it's going to cut off at the wrong time. So I like to put it at 6 volts. You can put it at I think you can also go to auto LiPo and then go to cell voltage, like per cell, but I don't think it works. I think once it's on auto LiPo, it just is the way it is. So put it at 6 volts. Be careful. Obviously, if you can tell that your car's losing power, it's time to come in. 6 volts on a LiPo that's only supposed to hit 6 volts is you're pushing it. You better have some good LiPos, because if you don't have good LiPos, you're probably going to start puffing them up. So be careful on that setting. Or just, always put a fully charged battery in it. I'm not 100% that that's how that works, but I'm pretty sure. That's how like e-flight speed controllers work for airplanes and stuff like that. When you put them on auto, it's whatever the percentage of your battery it's going to take. Like, so it's not reading the voltage. I don't really I can't really explain it, but just put it at 3 cells, especially if you're racing 3 volts. I mean, and you're going to be safe. Otherwise, your battery's going to cut off in the middle of a race. Or another thing that can happen is if you have it on that auto cutoff and you have it on some of the higher settings through the Castle link, say you punch it real hard, your spur gear's a little bit more locked up than loose, I guess you could say, and you're on a high bite surface, good traction is what I'm talking about, and you're punching the throttle and really trying to make it, do a wheelie or lift the front wheels off the ground, you're gonna probably dip that LiPo down past its voltage on the LiPo cutoff. On the auto LiPo, you're gonna dip it below the voltage, and it's gonna shut off on you. If you're just messing around in the street and playing, that's not a big deal. But when you're on the track, if you're, say you're on your last lap and you're head to head with somebody, and you're trying to punch it out of a corner and get that jump on them, and it shuts your battery off, or it makes you hit your cutoff on your LiPo, that's gonna be a bad day. So other than that, my opinion, $118, it's totally worth it. Like I said, it's not, at least I'm not getting it to do wheelies or anything like that, but I don't want it to really. For racing, it's a great setup. It's like perfectly even with the higher dollar stuff as far as speed and everything. I can gear it up more if I wanted to, go down a little bit if I wanted to. There's plenty of room there. It's not overheating, it's not getting hot. Other than that, it's a good system. And stay tuned for the rest of my reviews. I'm going to do another review on the chassis, the LCG chassis, what I had to do to put this in the Castle in here, and my opinions on the chassis. And I'm going to also give you my race setup. Just, you know, some people don't have a race setup. It's hard to find info on, you know, what's a good setup. I believe that I know quite a bit about this stuff. Been doing it a long time. So I'll give you guys like a setup on where my shock holes or my shock mounts are, you know, where they're at, shock fluids, you know, everything that I've done to the car pretty much. Maybe give you guys a couple of pointers. You got new guys that are getting racing or younger guys that are getting racing. You know, subscribe to my channel and I'll keep videos coming. Thank you guys. Have a good day.